Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Because Christianity is a system about grace, it's all about grace. We need to hope, well, we should hope, and we do hope that Christian people in Chattanooga will be more involved in the reforms that are waiting in the wings upon and of state violence, state-sanctioned violence, and the excesses of this kind of abuse are everywhere to be read and to be endured by review and by reading. Go online and look at the videos. You can see just astonishing abuses of travelers, of moms, of people with addictions. But let me give a reason why these innocent people are being tased and suffocated and shot in the back. What the reasoning of it is. There is and some of it you will find sympathetic, and some you will not identify with at all. I suggest, but one is training. There's probably 130 hours on training on the use of force, the use of violence, defensive tactics, and the like. There are 8 hours for de-escalation techniques, and we're told by Sheriff Jim Hammond that there is de-escalation training that's been going on in Hamilton County for 5 years. And maybe it's having an effect. We have few reports about violence in the Chattanooga area, and if there is one, make sure I know about it. Right, contact me directly, David Tulis, your host here at 92.7 FM and at 95.3 FM HD4. That is us, and that is me. I'm arguing for loving our neighbor and buying local. Near is better than far, small than big, and simple better than complex. And down to the footnotes where I do my work with sans serif type, right? All my work is without serifs, and that's because my words are not compulsory. My words don't have the little blades on the ends, which is what the serif is. SERIF is what a serif is. And newspaper type, for example, has serifs on it. But I like Helvetica, which is Swiss, which is neutral and voluntarist. It is non-compulsory. It is peace-oriented. It is a place. Switzerland is a place where you have negotiations, where peace treaties are signed, where combatants get together in Geneva, overlooking the fountain there at the western end of Lac Léman, and they sign the dotted line to end their wars. The sans serif type is Helvetica or Geneva, and it is neutral. And that's in the footnotes. I use neutral. I use sans serif type everywhere, right? And I would argue there too, as against the national economy and the national narrative, and against the good people even. It's personal. That personal is better than corporate, and that physical is better than abstract. Now, officers gas people, tase people in the back, having them fall down on their faces on the street. I mean, think of how you can break a tooth doing that. You can break a nose. You can have a lethal concussion if while you're falling you don't think to put your hands in front of you to break the fall. You're going to have an awfully bad headache and maybe a fractured skull. But I saw in my reasonable review of the news, I saw a video of that. Of a grandmother, an older woman being tased in the back, walking away from an officer, and being tased. But her hands did some kind of as she was falling forward, they were somewhat in front of her. Though I don't know, in her state of electrical shock, whether or not they could really break her, the fall of her head on the pavement. But police are. We have to understand what they're thinking about. Right, their goal is their own safety. Right, they think primarily of their own safety. Get home at the end of the shift. That's your main goal. And if there is to be an accident, where a misunderstanding of events or misunderstanding of a person's actions occurs, let it be that if there's death, that it not be yours, but that it be the civilians. If there's to be an accident involving the letting of blood, better that of the civilian than that of yourself. That is the main mantra. Self-preservation. We're here about ourselves. We're here to enforce the law. We are here to be strong in the brotherhood of the blue. And we don't take guff from people, and we are the elites. We are, in fact, a specially protected people, a category of people who can kill with statutory protection. And that is because we are armed, we have bulletproof vests, and we are in a state of war. Even here in Chattanooga, there is a state of war. But of course, the marketing by the mayor's office, well, really by the police department, is a continual effort to dissuade people from thinking thoughts in that direction, right? The forbidden thought. And yet violence serves the purpose. Violence by the state against the individual through the police departments of municipal corporations such as Chattanooga creates a sense of clarity for the public. You have to understand your place, right? You need to live in fear. You need to live in dread that the blue lights are on behind you. That you need to have automatic compliance. That compliance and obedience is automatic and without resistance and without guff, right? You do not say, why you order me to lie down on the ground. You don't ask that question. You just don't, because the officer now is going to get angry. And his anger is not allowed to be personal, but his anger, when it occurs, is a representation of the state as against you. Now, the state tries, of course, counter that by having free classes at Chat State. There are many inducements, right? You can gamble on the state's in the state system. You can do all kinds of things. You can even open a business with the state's permission. There are all kinds of graces that the state grants so that you won't see that kind of force, right? The use of force has countervailing arguments against it. The proprietary claim made by the state against you is softened by these other benefits. But terror does have a social value. Dread has a social value for the municipal corporation, and that's why we have mayors all across the state of Tennessee that allow these organizations to continue under their supervision. Right, the mayor is always responsible for the police department, its successes in solving crimes, in catching rapists and the like. Those are to his credit, and also the killings, the use of the N word, the use of the S word, the MF word, of course, all go to his. They're all negatives on his account. At least that's how they should legally. That's how they are, and they should be understood that way by as having that effect by you, my listener here on the David Tulis Show. There is no grace. There is law, right? There's law and discretion, and whenever there is a friendly encounter that ends with drive safely and you're free to go, that is also a part of the argument, right? We don't have to punish you. We graciously allow you to proceed, and we're not going to arrest you. Even these acts of grace are an establishment of the main paradigm, which is to say the people over the state. Okay, so that's why there's an explanation of the use of force by the state. It is official. You might say at the sharpest way. If I want to put a serif on my letters in saying this, let me do that. It is a kind of official terror, and the people have to be held in subjection. And that of course explains the larger relationship of the American people to the national government. It is the same thing with surveillance and taxation and lawless courts and lawless enforcement, the drug war, and many other things which are part of maintaining national control. Well, but how do we can we see these reasons? Can we see this rationale in particular stories? For example, the story of Charlena Lyles, 30. She was a mother of 4 children. She was 4 months pregnant, and as we are reading in a post at truthfight.com from the 7th of November, she called police to report an Xbox had been stolen. Well, 2 officers came, Jason Anderson and Stephen McNew, and she was dead within about 3 minutes. She opened fire. They opened fire on her. She was shot 7 times, twice in the back. One of the bullets went into her unborn baby, according to the Seattle Post Intelligencer, quoting her attorney, Karen Cooler. Not one shot should have been fired, let alone 7. She had no drugs or alcohol in her system, which, of course, the police do, trying to find a reason as they try to dig up a reason for the slaughter. There's a chart that Activist Post shows of where all the bullets entered into. There's a naked figure of a woman, and there are little blotches showing where the bullets entered. Charles Lyle, her father, said, "Hearing the details of the shooting just makes me feel more empty. I lost my daughter and my next grandson. I just just don't have the words. A cousin, Katrina Johnson, says, did they shoot her as she fell to the ground? How did she get shot in the back? I still don't know that and understand that. But any which way, it was excessive force. 7 times for her little pregnant 100-pound self was out of control. But you see, to expect control is perhaps to expect too much given the main premise. What about the story, another story out of Hammond, Indiana? Well, it's out of Chicago, but a family from Hammond, Indiana, was on their way to Stronger Hospital to visit a dying mother. The woman there with her boyfriend, her name is Lisa Mahoney, and her boyfriend is Jamal James, and there were 2 children that belonged to her in the car at the time. She was pulled over because she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Police came to the window and asked Mahone for her license and registration, which she gave. And she said, look, indicating she was in a hurry, I'm on my way to the hospital. I've got my dying mom is there. But they just ignored that, and then they became aggressive, right? They took the command voice, and they demanded that Jamal provide an ID. Now, he didn't have an ID because it had been taken from him, you might say stolen from him by police in a recent encounter in which he'd been ticketed for a traffic violation. And so what Jamal did was try to say, well, look, here's my ticket, right? Here's the traffic ticket, which indicates the reason that I don't have this ID. Of course, he's not behind the wheel. Why would anybody think that he had authority to ask ID from someone who is in the back seat or in the front seat? Well, he reached for his bag to get the ticket out, and the officers, several of them, all drew their weapons. Right, this clearly is a threat to their lives that he's getting something out of a bag, and so they're threatening him. They're using profanity. They're demanding that he exit the car. Jones told them that he meant no harm and requested to speak to a supervisor. Okay, that's also, you're offending these officers. You're going to come out of the car one way or another. You want your kids to see you come out through the window, one of the officers said. But the family stays in the car, hoping that a 911 call for a supervisor would be taken seriously. She gets off the phone. The officers surround the car and ask them to step out again. Mahone responds to the officer as saying, why do you say somebody's going to hurt you? People are getting shot by police. That's why they didn't want to get out. Before she was able to finish her sentence, the story by John Vibes says, the officer smashed through the window and tased Jones, the man, spraying the young children in the back seat with shattered glass. I was just so sad. It was horrible, says a girl, Jania, 7 years old, traumatized by the experience. Dana Kurtz is an attorney. They had no probable cause, 1, to even ask Jamal to get out of the car, or 2, to engage in excessive force in tasering and arresting him. But here's the police department statement. The Hammond police officers were at all times acting in the interest of officer safety and in accordance with Indiana law. But in general, I'm not sure where this took place now. But anyway, in general, police officers who make legal traffic stops are allowed to ask passengers inside if a stopped vehicle for identification, and to request that they exit a stopped vehicle for the officer's safety without a requirement of reasonable suspicion. Kurtz responded to this statement saying there was absolutely no search, nothing to suggest that there was criminal activity going on, and certainly not anything that would authorize to taser someone and pull them out of the car and shatter glass in the back seat with children present. Well, what about that? What about that? Well, we think that there's maybe some supervision if we just have police cameras. Well, police cameras are there; they're always on, and yet police officers get away with these things. You have police officers shooting their own videos, shooting people in the back, stopping a cruiser in the middle of a street in a neighborhood, and having a bunch of boys showing an automatic pistol aimed at a bunch of boys, telling them all to get on the ground. Why does this happen? There has to be a fundamental rethinking of this matter. Sometimes there are settlements that are made. There is a story of a settlement that comes out of, let's see, which newspaper is this? Washoe County, RGJ.com. I think, I'm not sure exactly now which state this is in, but parents of a man killed by Washoe deputies to get a $500,000 settlement. They kicked this man They put a hood over his face, kicked him in the side, kneeled on his lower back, used painful arm bar holds on him, and kept him pinned on his stomach, making it difficult for him to breathe, according to a video it's Nevada, by the Reno Gazette-Journal. It was a video that ran an hour. It had been edited by the newspaper, but I didn't see the video. When decedent stated he could not breathe, they did not provide any help or even begin to appreciate the level of danger and harm decedent was experiencing, the lawsuit says. The deputy of that, the sheriff of that county, Chuck Allen, Washoe County, Nevada, says the actions of the deputies do not reflect the standards of the men and women who work in the sheriff's office. The beginning of the video shows him standing there naked in a cell with nothing in it except a toilet and the tank, a protected tank for the toilet. A man just there in his underwear. An animal. He looks like an animal in a cage. He's nearly naked. There's nothing there. He has no clothes on. And he's clearly irrational. The video, the part that I saw, showed him wrapping his head with toilet paper. And as his mental state continued to deteriorate, he was pacing the cell. He was at times in a fetal position while clutching his head, and he drew on the walls with his own blood, and he climbed the metal sink to talk to the ceiling vent. This was what this man did, and there's a $500,000 reward for that, reported by the Reno Gazette and Journal. About surveillance. Well, surveillance by the police. When we first had the stories in Chattanooga about these cameras run by the CPD, I was critical of that whole scheme, and the reason for it is that it makes the job of the officer very difficult. For one, the officer now is under heightened scrutiny. Everything he says and does in an interaction with a member of the public is open for review of the supervisor, and that seems to me intolerable as an employee of city government to have to endure. But also, perhaps worse is this, that now we have one more level of surveillance. We have local police surveillance. And if you have video on the officer, well, what's wrong with video and telephone polls, right? That's the whole idea of intelligent policing, using predictive software and the like. If we have more surveillance from the officer, well, certainly we can have it on polls, right? But don't we want to know when gang members are driving by in pursuit of some rival gang member in another car? Don't we want to have a video of that? And so you have of which neighborhoods we have increased surveillance. There's a story in Fox News that I want to just mention to you about a study of 1,000 Washington, D.C. police officers, and there's no reduction in police violence. The story says that across the country, tens of millions of dollars have been spent paying for body cameras and the data management systems behind them. But the study says that their effectiveness in reducing citizen complaints is minimal. The study is by David Yoakum, Anita Ravishankar, and Alexander Kopik. The report is called "Evaluating the Effects of Police Body-Worn Cameras." Sorry, there were 2,000 Washington, D.C. officers, half with and half without cameras, for 18 months, and the team analyzed the use of force situations and civilian complaints against them. Police departments investing in body cameras should not expect dramatic reductions in the use of force complaints or other large-scale shifts in police behavior solely from the deployment of this technology, says David Yoakum of the lab at D.C. to the Washington Post. So if you are a police department, thinking of this technology on its own is going to be something to cause big shifts on those two dynamics, this would be a cause to recalibrate your expectations. There's a quote here from Sergeant Matthew Mail, the chairman of the D.C. Police Labor Union. He too expected the study's results to be different. I honestly thought that complaints would have come down. We're spending all this money to realize that everything is the same. Maybe that's a good thing, that we've been doing things right from the beginning. Well, the reform has to be elsewhere, right? Here in Chattanooga, we have expectations for new surveillance of the people, right? This is surveillance of the people now. That somehow that you, my listener, are in a police video. that I can get a copy of through open records, by the way. I can get a copy of you, my listener, on a video, or some of the event, or making an open records request. I can do that from my desktop, my laptop computer right here next to me. Right? I can just go to the city attorney's office on the open records request portal and demand the video. I can have an open demand. I could maybe make a demand every day. I haven't thought really about that yet. Because I'm a little low on manpower, but theoretically, I could see you having a traffic encounter, or you with your undershirt on and no shirt having some kind of argument on the side of the road there, where you're raking the leaves and pulling roots out in the ditch by your house, and the officer comes by and wants to see if you have a permit for your hoe, right? and there you are. Unshaven that Saturday morning and sweating a bit and not being at your best, right? And I can get a hold of that video by open records, and that's because the police camera system is surveillance of you. It is surveillance of you, which makes me want to suggest the following: if you are a civic-minded person, you, my listener, I suggest make a tape on a video, an audio file or a video file of your encounters. Make a video of these encounters. It's important that the surveillance go both ways, that the officers, that they are on record as involving themselves as against members of the public or serving them, as they make a record. So you too make a record. Don't have any encounter with an officer without keeping a record, especially if it is an aggressive one where he is coming upon you for a field interview or something like that, right? Maybe he's fishing for probable cause. Maybe he just doesn't like you. Maybe you're the wrong color. Maybe you're, walking while Hispanic or something like that. And you, my listener, I suggest make a record. It would be good for you. It would be good to rehearse afterward what happened. And of course, a record is a record, and I would suggest that you do that. Now, we are going to look next at a program here in Chattanooga, which deals with children. What do they need to be taught to obtain a better perspective on right and wrong? Is there an organization in Chattanooga that is, you might say, filling in the gap where the public school teaches merely decision-making pragmatism? Is there a way that the children can be given an alternative scheme, right? An alternative theory on how to evaluate right and wrong, on how to have a moral standard that is not private and not personal, but one that is external to them. In other words, can they hear about a system of government and self-government external to them, one that doesn't change, one that is not variable, and that has been consistent since the day that Adam was formed out of the ground. This is David Tulis, and I'm arguing that you should love your neighbor, buy local. We cover here on the David Tulis Show local economy and the free market, brought to you by Nooganomics, Nooganomics.com, which is the website for the man who matters. And I've got explosive material ahead. If I can just get it off my desk, and appreciate your subscribing to that website at Nooganomics.com. Also, like us on Facebook. We are on Facebook at Nooga Radio, live on Nooga Radio, and also on YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio. Like us on Facebook. Do like us. I would be most grateful. This is David Tulis. And now
traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.